everyone, a very good evening. You're watching the Money Show on ET Now. I'm Mubina Kapasi, and for all our regular viewers of the Money Show, you'll know by now that every Friday we metamorphosize of sorts into the Women's Show. We bring to you some very interesting topics that affect women on a day-to-day basis in their businesses, in their lives, in their jobs. And every week I have the pleasure of being joined by a series and a panel of astonishing and brilliant women. Well, this Friday is obviously not going to be an exception, but the topic, of course, is, as always, something different. Today, I thought of talking about networking. It's something that everybody tells us that we must do, stresses on how important it is to build networks, connections that as far as possible can last a lifetime. But many a times, and especially for us introverts, it can be very difficult to go out there and approach somebody, introduce yourself. But whether you're an entrepreneur or somebody working in the corporate world, promoting you is quintessential and extremely important. Showing your work, telling the world what you do, that's essentially what networking starts with. And then, of course, it's a never-ending process. So I have with me three very, very special ladies, and they are, mind you, from an array of different environments, from an array of different backgrounds. So I'm proud to introduce the panelists that I have with me. First up, Vanshika Goenka. She's the founder and CEO of Kool Kanya. Hers is a platform that has brought together more than 100,000 women of freelancers, entrepreneurs, working women, and so on. Maya Chandrasekaran, co-founder and managing partner of Green Artha Innovations, and she's also the co-founder of the Women in Investing Network, and she is as well somebody who has been making huge strides in building a wonderful long-lasting network for herself. And finally, Deeksha Ahuja, who clearly realizes that women do tend to lag behind when it comes to going out there, introducing themselves. Thus, she is the founder of Encubay and Collaborate-her. I think the name in itself does explain a lot of it. She's also, by the way, a serial entrepreneur and the co-founder of edtech firm Cedarwood. So to all three of you, thank you so much for joining me today on this very special episode of The Money Show. Vanshika, let me start off with you first. You're the youngest, so I guess I'll hand over the platform to you first. I think you know, your platform does wonders for entrepreneurs, for salaried individuals to sort of connect with each other. And I think it's a great way for those individuals who are a bit shy of showing their face, of putting themselves out there, to sort of, you know, be on their laptops or on their mobile phones to connect with each other. So to start with, why don't you, share a little bit about Kool Kanya for our viewers, and continue it with the importance of networking for not just entrepreneurs, but for salaried individuals as well.
Thank you, Mubina, for having me. So Kool Kanya is a platform on a mission to help every woman out there create a career that she loves. Whether she's starting out, whether she wants to rejoin the workforce, become an entrepreneur or a freelancer. We have content, a community, a freelance marketplace, which they can join in as sellers, and we have weekly events. Now, coming to networking, I think networking is quintessential for both entrepreneurs and salaried professionals. Now, coming for entrepreneurs, right, even just from my perspective, when I was starting out, I would shy away from networking just because of the word, right? It's like, okay, trying to form a connection or to, make sure that someone can be of use for something. And I had to flip my perception of the word and look at it more as developing a relationship in which is mutually beneficial for me and the other person. For an entrepreneur, as someone who was running a startup in the beginning, it has helped me connect with experts in different areas. It has helped me connect with VCs, pitch my business. It has also helped me actually hire. Networking has in fact helped me hire people who've stayed the longest, because you really connect with them on a one-to-one basis. You get to know their value system. And I've spoken to people even in corporates, and even when I worked in a corporate, networking is so important, not only outside, but in your organization as well. We kind of underplay the water cooler conversations that are there happening on a day-to-day basis, where you're just catching up with someone. In those conversations, you find out, okay, what's happening, in another area in the organization where maybe there's a vacancy, maybe you want to move to that area, or maybe you might learn a little more about the culture, right? So networking is supposed to be sort of, I think, looked at more as developing a relationship. And I think it needs to be looked at as a way that might not be beneficial immediately, but could be beneficial later on. And I think it's also to look at it as mutual. I think that's very important, where you are giving and you are taking. It has to be looked at in that way, because, the minute you look at it as very transactional, you might not get the benefit immediately. You might get it a couple of years later. But to really enjoy the process, you need to look at it as developing a relationship.
Maya, I was reading a wonderful post written by you a couple of years ago, but it sort of, it was one of the first things that actually popped up when I punch in your name. And you spoke about how women specifically tend to miss this serendipity boat when it comes to making useful connections. And I think that leads me to perhaps understand why Deeksha as well has focused her platform, Collaborate-her, on women. But Maya, before that, something that really stuck out in your note is being a bit more shameless. And I think that's a wonderful way really to put it, and a more simplified way as well to put it for women. But if you could just elaborate a bit more on that, Maya.
Yeah, I mean, I think shameless is, again, a very sort of blunt and broad word to use. But the point I was making is that we are not good as women at asking for things. And Vanshika spoke about this just now, right? Which is that she was concerned that networking seemed almost sort of promoting a self-agenda. But I think it's important to ask, because if you don't ask, you don't get. It's also important to ask because only if you ask, you know how to deal with a no, which is, again, a very important learning journey. And finally, I think it's also important to enjoy the process. Again, I totally resonate with what Vanshika said, which is that if you go into it and say that I'm going to enjoy this learning experience about finding out about someone and what it is that they do and who they are, it becomes much less transactional. And it is really, for example, the network that I run, we are very clear that anyone is welcome to join if they believe that they can either give or derive value from it. And that's the key, right? To not feel like you are either taking or being very transactional, to be aware of the fact that you also have something to offer in exchange for this insight or whatever it is that the relationship brings.
It's wonderful how you all will actually realize this fact of life, that women in general are lagging behind when it comes to networking. Hence, each one of you all have done your bit to sort of give that platform to women, that here you go, talk to people and, build connections. Deeksha, let's talk about Encubay as well as Collaborate-her. What do you aim to do with both of these, firms that you have set up? What does it do, for women who perhaps are a bit more introvert in nature, a bit more shy, who may even not be knowing how to put themselves out there?
Thanks, Mubina, for having me here. And excellent question. Dating back to my own personal experience, I started off as an entrepreneur in the edtech space back in 2012, 2013. And honestly, back then, edtech was not even a term. So as an entrepreneur, how, are you expected to actually grow your business if you don't have a set of people who you can go to seek advice from? And when I started doing that very actively, by God's grace, I think I'm an extrovert, so it came very naturally to me. But the one thing that Mubina stuck out was the fact that most of the forums I was part of, networking or otherwise, they were completely devoid of women. And that somewhere really, really, stuck strong with me. And then when you kind of correlate the lack of women in these forums and you correlate it to the numbers of female founders that are scaling up their ventures or raising capital, you see a very strong correlation. I did a lot of research. I spoke to about 1,000+ entrepreneurs, all women across the country, spoke to investors over 5 years since 2015. And the major reason for, this disparity to be there was not capability or not opportunity, but just that women lacked networking opportunities and forums, or they were not part of traditional networks. which is precisely why I put together Encubay and Collaborat-her. Encubay is a platform which is a global diversity-focused platform of mentors, experts, investors, corporate partners, global partners that have come together to make this entire network accessible to a lot of female founders. And, even though we're a very, very baby, a very young company, we conceptualized this just about in June this year. We've seen over thousands of female entrepreneurs, not only in India, but even outside the world, reaching out to us and even collaborating and working. So yeah, Mubina, that's what we strive to do. And I feel the next decade is going to really change the way we have looked at networking. And I think women have a very, very strong part to gain and to add to that.
I know for a fact that all three of you are astute at this networking game, so much so that even behind the scenes, these three women were chatting up a storm together, trying to get to know each other. And I think that's a lesson for all of us to remember. Never lose an opportunity to talk to other people. Well, Maya, Vanshika, as well as Deeksha, I'll request all of you to stay on with us. We'll slip into a very short break, but be right back. Welcome back. You're watching The Money Show on ET Now. I'm in conversation with three wonderful ladies who are stressing on the importance of building a network of colleagues, of friends, of peers, and thus relationships that can last you a lifetime. Vanshika, let me come to you now. You mentioned about how you yourself were a bit of an introvert and, perhaps it took a little time before you could go and approach people, or you would find it difficult to, sort of break the ice. What made you thus then build a whole networking platform? I mean, was it an external motivation that sort of prompted you and said that, okay, you know what, you've got to go change, you've got to go out there and, promote yourself? What exactly was that trigger for you?
So actually what triggered Kool Kanya overall was I was sitting, I was earlier working with a sanitary pad company, and we were looking at how do we redevelop the sanitary pad, and I was the only woman in the room. And that's when it struck me that, why are there only men here? How is a man is never going to wear a sanitary pad, right? They'll never know how to make one because they're never going to wear one. And that's when I really started researching as to why women drop out of the workforce. And that's when I realized that there isn't enough mentorship. There isn't enough women's clubs, quote unquote, where women can really lean on, women can ask for support. Women go through so many life changes, right? Whether it's getting married, whether it's having a child, whether it's dropping out of the workforce, they just don't have anyone in terms to someone like to lean on, ask for advice, whether it's peer advice, whether it's expert advice. And that's really where the idea of Kool Kanya came about. Now, coming, I think, to my networking experience, really plays into this as well. I used to really be averse to networking in general, just because I thought it was, I'm trying to forward my own agenda. The word networking sometimes is very intimidating, right? So that's where really I think virtually connecting also really helps, because especially for introverts as well, because it's a small step there, right? You're just putting in you're typing something in, rather than going to this big event and meeting hundreds of people. So that's also really where, the Kool Kanya community plays in. And I think and we also have an anonymous feature where people, if you're afraid of putting your identity, or, you want to ask a question, which, you feel really vulnerable about, you can just use the anonymous feature and ask a question. So we really try to facilitate different needs that come about.
Very interesting. And yeah, I can totally, digest the fact that, yes, you may be a little shy when it comes to face-to-face, but, maybe that boost of confidence will come about if you have to talk to somebody via a digital platform. Do you think, Maya, that in this era of work from home, where almost all of us are connecting with each other virtually, it is possible to build lasting, meaningful relations? Do you think we are past that day and time where you have to meet up for a coffee to sort of network? Do you think that a Zoom call would sort of suffice in today's day and age? Or if COVID has sort of nurture that and push that towards that day and age?
I think that my answer to that is a yes and a no. I think there's always going to be a place for the in-person serendipity meeting where you had not sought someone out, but you just happen to be next to them and you strike up a conversation and you find alignments of work or interest or passions. So that I think will never go away, and I really hope it doesn't, because there's a magic and there's a surprise to that. When you don't expect to connect with someone. At the same time, I do think that the virtual world has also opened up a lot of possibilities. I mean, Vanshika did talk about one of them, which is that you don't have to meet in person. It takes some of the risk out of it. But it's also made it a lot easier to join different forums, which are not geographically linked anymore. So one of the things that I have always found, which is important about networking, is to find your group or to find your safe space. And if you can do that virtually, then that safe space could be anywhere in the world. It could be with people anywhere in the world. And the virtual world has made that possible. It also means that you need to be a little bit more intentional because, again, there's no serendipity. I have to go searching for the right people that I would like to connect with. I have to think a little bit about what that interaction entails. But again, I don't think that's bad. I think that also gives me a sense of what it is I'm trying to build. Why is this relationship important for me to build? There's a little bit of reflection that goes into each conversation. So, as I said, it puts a little bit more work on you. But I would not say that COVID has taken away, the power of building networks or the ability to build networks. So over the course, we've now been in this state for like 9 months. And I have to say that, there have been many new relationships that have been built, sometimes even with people whose faces I haven't seen, but very much people that I know that I can rely on from a professional perspective.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think this pandemic has generated a lot of digital pals, if you could call it that. And I think that's wonderful, Deeksha, do you think that, a digital space would be a good space for individuals who are introverts to sort of start off their networking journey, or where do you believe introverts should start off? Because we've clearly established that building relations, building a network is beneficial for you in the long term, for your career in general, for you in the long term. But if you're an introvert, do you think a digital platform like a Kool Kanya is a great place to start off, and then perhaps you advance to the next level and personally meet people?
100%. And in fact, you set the word introvert and you set the word digital, and both of them go so well together. So as an introvert, I think your biggest inhibition is that you probably are not attuned to go out to meet people, in an offline event. But that completely changes in an online event for two reasons. You have a lot of formats to actually start building networks without, directly approaching someone. On Kool Kanya, I'm sure I've seen a lot of blog posts. I've seen a lot of support posts. It's absolutely okay to just go and put in a comment there and say, hey, I completely resonate with your thoughts, or even do that on LinkedIn, right? So that's your first step. The minute you kind of start opening up to that, you start letting people know that you are approachable and you're out there. That's when the second step can come in, where you can just maybe shoot out a message on either of these platforms, shoot out a mail. Sometimes so many of these networking forums have, chat forums, right? So for a lot of people, they're not too comfortable just getting on a Zoom call, right? So it's much easier to kind of blend in, get to know the person over mail or chat. And then after you feel that, yes, there could be positive synergies, that's when maybe you can take it over a call. And who knows, if things go well, that could also maybe translate into an in-person meeting. So Mubina, I completely agree with you. I think as an introvert today, networking has really opened out. It's really branched out. And, a lot of people don't realize this, that networking is possibly one of the strongest ways to build your personal brand. Now, whether you are a salaried professional who's looking at growth in their organization, or whether you're an entrepreneur looking to grow your organization, you have to build that personal brand, because anything that you do forward, whether to build your venture or the growth of the company, will stem from that personal brand. It kind of builds that set of values around you. So I think this is a great spot for introverts to start networking.
There's a wonderful line I've read somewhere that if you've not asked, the answer is anyway no's. And I think that those 5-6 words itself speak volumes. So ladies, put yourselves out there. That's the best way to promote yourself, the work you do, the effort you put in, because there's no bigger spokesperson for you than yourself. Vanshika, Maya, as well as Deeksha, it was lovely to get in your words of wisdom on this entire networking conundrum, especially for those individuals who don't really have it in them to go out there, meet people without making it look like some sort of an agenda of sorts. And I hope that, our viewers as well have benefited quite a bit. The women watching have sort of been taking notes of all that you have been mentioning. So thanks to all three of you.